Okay. So, Amber, I think we are recording this, so just to make everybody aware, because what we'd like to do is to put the recording for this onto our website so that we can make it available for people who weren't able to join today. Because a lot of people have expressed an interest, but Fridays aren't always the best day. So, Amber, if you just want to go to the next slide. Hopefully everybody can see that slide fine, but if you can't, then do shout in the chat, in the Q&A even. Okay, so what we're going to do over the next just under an hour is we're going to introduce you to a new project, and that project is a centre. So our centre, it's a bit of a mouthful. It's the LifeArc Centre for the Acceleration of Rare Disease Trials, or we might occasionally refer to it as the LifeArc ARDT project. So we're going to tell you a bit about that, and then we are going to explain why we're setting up a LEAP. So that's a lived experience advisory panel. So we'll refer to that as LEAP quite a bit, and actually in a moment I'll pop a couple of these terms into our Q&A just so that people have them if they're joining later. Then I'm going to tell you a bit more about that LEAP and just talk you through a little bit about the application. I've got a few panel members with me today who are part of the area of work within our new centre that is most concerned with PPIE. So that's public and patient involvement and engagement. And then we'll open for questions. So you can ask us any questions, particularly if you have questions about the specifics of the projects, then we'll try to answer some of those, although might not have all the key people on today for that. But really the Q&A is more about any questions you have about the LEAP, about the Lived Experience Advisory Panel, and how people can get involved and who we're looking for. So next slide, Amber. So key question, do we have Dave with us yet? Let me just have a look and check. Matthew, you're on the call, aren't you, with us? Yes, I can see you there. Let me just double check that Dave is managing to join us. Just while we're checking and waiting for him, maybe Matthew, you can just drop him a quick message to make sure that he's got the link for that one in his calendar. Oh, we have got Dave, brilliant. So Dave Jones, some of you will know already, but in case not, Dave is the coordinator of our new LifeArc Centre. So he'll tell you a bit more about this and where this fits, but basically this is one of 4 new centres funded by LifeArc. Who is a really important and becoming even increasingly important funder in the rare disease space. So the way the project is structured is we have 3 kind of central partners. So we have Newcastle University, and that's where Dave and myself sit. We have Queen's University Belfast, and we have University of Birmingham. And then we have really key support, especially in this work package, but also in others, for colleagues from Alström Syndrome UK and Genetic Alliance UK. So what I'm going to do in a moment is I'm going to hand over to Dave, who's going to tell us a bit about what our new centre, that's our LifeArc ARDT, Centre for Acceleration of Rare Disease Trials, what it's all about really in terms of, what challenges are we trying to address in this 5-year project, which kicked off officially in September. So we're about a bit over 6 months in. And then I will pick up a bit more and explain why we're looking to set up a LEAP, a lived experience advisory panel, and talk about some of the mechanics of that. And then I'm going to invite our other panel members here, so particularly Kerry Longmore, Sophie Mira Roberts, and Stephen Blackburn, in particular, to talk through a little bit about to introduce themselves properly at that point, but also to talk a bit about where they see an added value and an opportunity in this LEAP. And I think we may have 1 or 2 other PPIE experts joining us a little bit later as well. So just before I hand over to Dave, my name's Victoria Headley. I'm a rare disease policy manager at Newcastle University in the UK. I'm used to doing lots of European project calls, you might have guessed. I'm a little bit of a jack of all trades and a master of none. I've worked in rare disease for many, many years, always at the cross rare disease level, so not in any particular disease community. And I have various roles within this new project. But actually, for the last, well, since we got going the first 6 months of the project, I've been deputising for one of our wonderful sociologists at Newcastle, Dr. Pauline McCormack, who is going to be back at work soon. She's been off poorly for a while. So she is officially the lead of the area of work in this project, which is most concerned with embedding good, robust PPIE. So for just to let you know, for future webinars and calls, for instance, it will perhaps be Pauline's face that you'll be seeing, at least in the welcome. So next slide, if you will, Amber. I'm going to hand over to Dave just to introduce himself and to tell us a little bit about the project. As we are going, if questions do occur to you, as I say, the Q&A is really intended to be about the leap itself, but if there's any sort of burning questions about the project, then, do feel free to pop those in the Q&A as well. And then when we get a little bit later in the agenda, we'll start to address those questions. And I think you should also be able to put your hands up and unmute yourselves at that point if you want to ask your question in a more engaging and direct way. Dave, over to you.
Yes, well, welcome everybody, and apologies for being a little bit late. It's inevitably you spend your life going from meeting to meeting to meeting. So Vicky's introduced it all very well. My name is Dave Jones. I'm a liver doctor. So I work in rare liver disease, particularly an autoimmune condition called primary biliary cholangitis. And I've kind of worked in rare disease for 30 plus years, although for many years we sort of downplayed the fact it was rare disease because nobody thought that rare disease was important. And one of the great things is that that's no longer the case. And now the importance of rare disease, the importance of the lived experience of people with rare disease is being recognized. And that is a huge step forward. So I started out very much as a laboratory scientist, and I have over time evolved into a treatments person. What are the best treatments for these conditions? How do you get them out to people in the real world? How do you make sure that access to treatment is equitable? And the other thing that I do a lot of is around symptoms and quality of life and how we can optimize that as an important aspect. So I've been on a sort of journey taking this back to people living with these conditions. I'm also heavily involved with a really effective patient group called the PBC Foundation. I'm the chair of their medical advisors, and they are a formidable organization for supporting patients to live their lives, supporting research and so on and so forth. So I've been very committed in this space for a long period of time. So everyone gets very excited by clinical trials about what they are, but the reality is that in order to have a treatment for any condition, we obviously need to have something that works to improve that condition in whatever way, but we also need to be able to prove that it works. Now, the fact that something works and then proving that it works are actually subtly different things, because there have been some examples in the past where things that clearly work couldn't be proved to work and therefore ended up not as treatments that could be used. So the biggest disaster any of us can have is a therapy that clearly makes a difference to people, but for whatever reason you can't prove to the people who license drugs and who reimburse them, pay for them within the NHS and other systems, that they actually do work. And so trials are really important because they are the final step that takes us from progress into care. And they're required to show that treatments are safe. They're required to show that treatments are effective. And so getting the evidence that treatment works in a way that is acceptable to the people in whom the evidence is being derived, but also the people who look at that evidence, is really critical. And this is such an issue in rare disease because, of course, whereas you might look at a common disease like type 2 diabetes or hypertension or something like that, there are large numbers of people with a single condition. There are a large number of people with rare disease in the country, 1 in 17 people, a huge group of people, but of course they're all different and they all require their own treatments or variants of treatments. The net result is that 95% of rare disease have no approved treatment. And so what we collectively as a community need to do is to work at that and have more effective treatments available in more of the rare conditions. It's as simple as that. Now, there are a number of reasons why there aren't treatments to do with how much research activity is going on, but there is also the problem of developing clinical trials in diseases that by definition are rare. You can't do 20,000 person trials, which you might do for a heart disease treatment. So it's more difficult to develop the treatments, and it is more difficult to prove that the treatments work. And that, in a nutshell, is why this LifeArc Centre has come into being. It's a recognition by LifeArc, who are a very enlightened funder, who think rare disease is really important, like we do, that actually we need to think again about how we get the evidence that these treatments work, and that we derive the evidence in ways that's acceptable to everybody. So this is really to do two things. One is to look again at how we get evidence, but the other is to make it far easier for people to take part in the types of studies that would give rise to that evidence. And one of the things that I talk about all the time is that we are democratizing research. We are taking it back to people living with these conditions, so that whoever you are, wherever you are, you can participate in trials if that's what you wish to do, not something that is dictated by whether or not the clinician that you see is interested or not. That's not fair. It's not appropriate. So we are changing the model. What do we need? We need better ways to derive evidence. We need to have ways that are more inclusive for people, more friendly to the participants. This needs to be focused very much on people's priorities, not just what doctors and researchers think is appropriate, but what you think is appropriate. And the UK is in a really unique position because of the NHS model, but we do have a little bit of fragmentation across the four nations. And so we want to take this to all points of the UK, because I think that is fair for everybody. So it is a platform to look again about how we do evidence, so that we can have more therapies being developed in more diseases that are going to be available to more people, in which people can feel more involved in how those are developed and evaluated. And that, in a nutshell, is what we're doing. Next one. So LifeArc, as I said, are a really good funder. They really care about rare disease. They are delightful people to work with. They are really important in this space, and this initiative is one of their 4 translational centres. So this is £40 million around the UK, so it's a big investment in rare disease. And there are 3 centres which are in individual rare disease types. There's one in childhood kidney disease, there's one in respiratory disease, and there's one in mitochondrial disease. Those are very specific areas. And of course, ours is the one that cuts across potentially all rare diseases, because it is about deriving evidence which could be in any particular disease type. So we're the blue dots. We have 3 lead centres ourselves in Newcastle, Belfast, and Birmingham, but it covers the UK in terms of its activity, and the other colour blobs are the centres for the other trial centres that I talked about. So our mission is a UK-wide programme accelerating rare disease trials, so accelerating, essentially reducing the length of time it takes to go from a good idea to a proven treatment, because nothing more frustrating than year after year after year being spent getting the evidence that we need. So it's about better evidence more quickly, so that we can bring therapies through into practice and then get them out into the NHS sooner. So we help people to design and deliver better trials. We also develop ways to which we can use the information that is collected as part of NHS care, to which we have a lot of information that we collect about how people's disease is progressing. Can we use that information to look at how therapies work? We think we can. It reduces the need to do additional trials over and above that. So how we collect information and use that information. How we make sure that clever people coming up with clever therapies leads to approval by regulators. So making sure that people design trials and other studies so that it's going to go through the regulatory approval. Many people on this call will be familiar with NICE. NICE is the body that decides which treatments are usable within the NHS. It's about effectiveness and cost effectiveness of treatments. They ask you lots of difficult questions, but they are very fair and very supportive. I've been to NICE 3 times, and all 3 times we've had drugs approved into the NHS. It's about having the right information, the right patient voice, and the right approach to it. So it's helping people to do it better, so there are no slip-ups in that process. And the really key thing, highly relevant to this discussion today, is ensuring patient and public involvement at every stage in the process. This is for you. This is not for me. This is for you, and this is your platform as much as it is ours. So that's what we're setting out to do here. And LifeArc are great friends to the rare disease community, and we really value their input. Next one. So this is this feels a little bit like this is, we're going to have an exam on this afterwards. We're not. We're just explaining what we're doing, but there are various different bits. And if you think of this as a journey, okay, a journey all the way through. So the first element, which is in many ways the bits that will be the most visible bit, is a national portal to go into trials. So at the end of all of this, there will be a website where if you've or a family member's had a diagnosis of a rare disease, or you've been found to have a particular gene type, if that's the case, you'll be able to go into this and find out what trials are available in the UK for you to be able to take part in if you want to find out more information about. It doesn't rely on your doctor or nurse to send you in that direction. It's up to you to find it. So this is the democratization bit. This will make trials run better, but it will also be much fairer. And so you can find the studies that you might like to take part in. And we'll be encouraging researchers and companies to put their studies onto this. Nobody is obliged to do anything with this. This is really just about being given the information that you want. And we developed in my world, as colleagues like Vicky have done in their own areas, we've done this before. And actually, in my experience, people living with the condition that I manage find this really good. This sense that they can control their information that they get, being notified about things that are relevant to them, actually creates a sense of positivity, and people value that hugely. So this is a very empowering thing in my experience, and people like it. In my world, we've gone from no treatments to 5 licensed treatments available in the NHS in a relatively short period of time. So this approach really, really works. It's focusing on getting to where you need to in the quickest possible way with the least potential for slip up. So this is doable. The second is very dear to my heart. All of it's dear to my heart, but I do a lot of work around symptoms and quality of life, chronic fatigue, chronic itch that patients in our area often get, making sure that trials don't just look at blood tests, they look at people, their lives, their experiences. This is a thing called patient-reported outcomes and lived experience input. So this is what actually matters to people, and making sure that we develop drugs in areas that matter to people, not just to doctors, which is the historic model. So this is making sure that no trial in the future is done without the patient experience being captured as part of it. It might surprise you that it isn't automatically, but we live in a far from ideal world, and we want to make it a little better. And that's going to make a big difference to large numbers of studies. Then is, how do you design better trials? Fewer numbers of people, less chance of getting placebo, dummy drugs in all of this, less time, less doing unnecessary things as part of it, making the trials smarter around the methodologies. Making them run better. The NHS can be a little bit clunky around getting these things started. It can be very slow. So making all that work far better and far faster. And then none of this is of any benefit whatsoever if those treatments don't then become available to people. So this is the bit where we ensure that as you go to NICE and then the NHS starts to commission these treatments, that this all happens seamlessly. So it takes positive trial drugs and treatments that are positive in trials and gets them out into practice. So those are the 5 key parts of it. And then we have 3 bits that really are involved in all of it. One is empowering patients and the public to be involved in the trial design. That's absolutely integral to what we're talking about today. So making sure that these are the right studies designed for people and acceptable to people, answering the right questions. Addressing equity and inclusion in clinical trials. This is really important because different parts of our population are affected in different ways by different diseases, conditions, and it's very important that trials reflect everybody who gets these conditions. So that's an important part. And then the last bit is to make sure that we have the future population of people that we will need, both patients, members of the public, but also doctors, nurses, trials people, understand rare disease and are ready to do this in the future. So 5, 10, 15, 20 years time, we've got the right workforce able to do this and make this a permanent fixture. Next slide. And I'm not sure if this is me or Vicky, but shall I just wrap up with
Yeah,
this one before
perfect, Dave. That would be
Vicky
good.
talks about the specifics of it? One of the things that I do with young doctors who are interested in our area is I just, with the patients group, encourage them to spend time talking to people, talking to family members. And it's the most crucial part of their early experience is listen to people, talk to people, find out what this really is all about. Don't read it in textbooks, listen to people. So the insights that come from people living with conditions and their carers are unique, and they almost always give you a different perspective to these conditions compared to conventional science. So those insights are critical. The more accurately these studies reflect the ways in which these diseases conditions impact on people, the more important. It is astonishing how often mistakes are made in how trials are designed. They are a really, really clever way of answering a question that nobody is asking. So lived experience can make sure that this is done properly. And if we get it wrong, the best drug in the world won't get approved and people won't benefit from it. So it is about better trials because of the authenticity. That's a word I use all the time in this setting. It's an authentic reflection of what's really happening. And then the diversity aspect is very important. The trials need to reflect the real world needs of real world populations of people, that this reaches all parts of the country, all populations, all age groups that are relevant, all genders, and so on and so forth. So this isn't tokenistic in any way, shape, or form. I have been working closely with patients and carers for 30 years now. And one of the reasons why we have this number of therapies that we have delivered in a way that is really effective for people is that we all the way through have listened to what people want and need. And I think my lived experience of all of this is that your lived experience is absolutely vital. So thank you for your interest in this. This is a journey we're all going on. It's a journey where both the journey and the destination matter, and your input is much appreciated, but it's also vital for this being really effective. So with that, I shall stop and pass back to you, Vicky.
Thank you so much, Dave. We've got some I would say it's difficult to have rich discussion in the Q&A because it's kind of one-on-one and then it pops away. But we've got some rich comments coming up in the questions actually. I know, Dave, you probably have to run to clinic at some point, but
No,
if you're
I'm
here
okay.
for a few minutes, brilliant. Then do have a look. If you click on the Q&A at the bottom, I've been responding to a few, but there's some really interesting comments and experiences that people have been sharing. If you go onto the Q&A, then you can see a few open, but if you go on the answered in the middle, you'll be able to see some of the things that we've been kind of chatting about while we're multitasking and following your excellent introduction to our centre. So your brain would always be very welcome. And I know some of those will resonate with you very, very much.
Yeah, well, let me read through all of those and I'll come back and give some
Perfect.
thoughts after you've
Super.
spoken a little bit more.
So Amber, if we can go to the next slide. So our LEAP. So our LEAP is our Lived Experience Advisory Panel. And the mission of our LEAP, what we want it to do in a nutshell, is to guide and shape the work of this new centre. And that can involve lots of different things. So, for example, we envisage that people who are part of this leap will be interested in co-creating some of the processes and the tools to make it easier and fairer for people to participate in research. What that means in reality, those of you who are very well versed in project speak, is those different areas that Dave showed before, they all correlate to work packages in the kind of project management speak. And there will be work packages that we envisage some of you will be particularly interested in. Some of you may be interested in all of them. So here, for instance, we would like to have some members of our LEAP at least really working with the colleagues who are looking at how we recruit people for clinical trials, where there are clinical trials, how we make it fairer and more equitable for people to be able to access trials. We expect that people will be interested in helping to develop processes to bring effective therapies to the people who need them. And we've talked in the Q&A there about some of the issues around access to medicines. What do you do if there's a medicine that's there that could, for instance, be repurposed for a rare condition, but nobody's really interested in moving that forward, or people don't really know how to best design a study to show whether that product really does what we think it's going to do. And also by more effective therapies that address the symptoms and the impacts that matter to patients. We mentioned earlier, not just necessarily the sort of biochemical things, but actually functionality, things that enable people to live their life to their best ability, and providing more equitable opportunities for patients across all 4 nations of the UK. So this centre really should have a 4 nation approach. It's not all about England. So our partners in Belfast are really important here, especially, but we really want to think also across all of the 4 nations, because there are differences around how easy it is to participate in clinical trials, how easy or difficult it is to access medicines, for instance. So essentially, the people in this leap, and we expect to appoint 15 people, that's the initial plan. The people in the leap will help us to shape the work and the delivery of this over the next 4.5 years, or as many of them as you wish to be joining us for. Next slide, Amber. So who should apply? All of these materials, by the way, are really all on our web page. And maybe Matthew, you could, if you're able to pop links. I'm not sure if you're able to pop links into Q&A, but if you are, if you could pop in the link to our site, that would be great. I think you all have that because that's where you would have signed up to register for the webinar. So by default, you probably know where that is. But if we can just make sure everyone has that, that would be great. So all I'm really doing here, I'm not sharing too much brand new stuff. It's just trying to hopefully bring some of our materials and our questions to life to help you see what we're looking for and why. So we are going really broad for this. In a way, this is a more challenging but also more interesting experience than, for instance, recruiting for patients to take part in a piece of research on a specific neuromuscular condition or a specific rare renal condition, where you obviously would target and reach out people who have that particular condition. Here, because our LifeArc Centre is really disease agnostic in the sense that what we're putting in place, what we're building, should ultimately benefit any and all rare conditions. There'll be a few rare diseases selected for us to kind of test some of these different structures and different approaches that we're going through. So we're developing the process to do that. But the centre itself, unlike the other 3 LifeArc centres that this is partnering with, does not is not dedicated to any single condition. So that means anybody with lived experience of a rare condition of any kind is very welcome to be part of this. And we welcome applications from people living with the condition themselves, so patients. Some don't always use the word patient because I know it's not always the best word to use. So people living with a rare condition themselves. Equally, we're really interested in hearing from parents, from carers, and from representatives of advocacy organisations who I know are very often in those former categories anyway. And we're also looking for a really broad, well-rounded group. So we want a mix of people with different experiences and indeed people with no experiences. So some of you on the call, especially those of you who are, running your own organizations, you will already be very expert in this, what one might call expert patient representatives and patient advocates. And that's brilliant. We want people who have, experience in engaging in clinical trials directly, who have experience in trying to influence policy. But we also want the people that we don't necessarily hear from all the time. We want people who have never participated, do anything like this before, who can really bring a different perspective and just tell us about your day-to-day needs and realities. So the answer is basically anybody is who we're looking for. So if you just click again, Amber, so just to make that even clearer, Amber, if you just perfect, thank you. So in terms of, the type of rare condition, we're not interested here in kind of dividing up the rare disease community. We want to get people ideally from as many of these different types of rare condition or types of experience as possible. So the first three, this is open to people who have experience of rare conditions that begin in childhood or begin in later life, both genetically inherited and non-genetically inherited. So we were talking in the Q&A about acquired conditions and autoimmune conditions, rare infections, any of these. I know that sometimes, because most of the rare conditions are genetically inherited, obviously genetically inherited, sometimes if you're living or your experience is of a non-genetically inherited condition, people can feel a bit left out of things. We really want here intentionally to try to get people in with a broad mix of these different sort of experiences. We're looking for a real mix in terms of age, gender, ethnicity. We really want a geographical mix. So we don't want everyone to be based in England. Equally, if we're looking at Scotland, we don't want everyone to be based just in Edinburgh. We would really like to get a little bit of a diverse mix as best we can. And as I said before, if you have experience of working in policy or advocacy or engaging in clinical research directly, brilliant. If you haven't got any of that, also brilliant. Next slide, Amber. So press clicky. Just a few points to bear in mind. So what do we expect from this leap? So we expect the leap to be meeting together as a leap. So all kind of 15 people, at least 4 times a year. So 4 or 5 times a year, usually online. If people have challenges in joining Zoom calls or team calls, we'll think about which of those is best to enable people to dial in by telephone, for instance. So we're conscious not everybody is kind of tech savvy or internet savvy. We're not going to be using the fax machines, Anthony, so we're one ahead of the general NHS on that front, but we will do our best to try to make all the arrangements we can to welcome everybody into these. And then we envisage at least one in-person meeting each year, probably as part of the general project meeting when all of the partners in our ARDT centre come together. Next slide, or next click, Amber. So in terms of commitment, as a sort of minimum commitment, we're expecting people to be able to set aside approximately 24 hours per year, so approximately 2 hours per month. That's kind of the baseline to really engage fully and to follow what's going on. It may be that some people want to do more than that, so there will be opportunities to do, I would say, at least double that if you wish to. So what we expect is once we get the panel in place, people will have interest or more interest in some of those different areas of work or areas of clinical research that Dave mentioned earlier. So some people actually might be, deeply committed to the EDI principles and getting more EDI robustness into research. Others will be really interested on how we develop better, more meaningful patient-reported outcomes and patient-relevant outcome measures. So depending on your expertise, we can kind of build this and tailor it. So not everybody is sort of overcommitted, because we know that very often people will have their own jobs, their own organizations to be involved in. They'll have, care issues which can take up a huge amount of time. So we're very flexible with that. Next click, Amber. Of course, we're going to compensate people appropriately. So all time, so the time you spend on this, probably every 3 months, we'll do a kind of a fees form with you that will be handled by dedicated people in Newcastle University and then University of Birmingham, who will kind of be your key points. We can reimburse people for their time at a rate of £25 per hour. This is almost certainly going to be in vouchers, but it's in really good voucher schemes that the universities use. So you can use them basically everywhere, in online, giant retailers, small retailers. You can use them in person in shops, across pretty much any, well, there's a long range of different shops and different marketplaces that you can use for those. And obviously when there is an in-person meeting that you're able to attend and would like to attend, then we cover all of your travel and accommodation and subsistence expenses. Next slide, or next click. So again, I mentioned we're looking for 15 people. once in place, you will be welcome to remain on our LEAP for the remainder of the project, which will be well, by the time people get up and running, just about 4 years and 4 or 5 months or so. However, there's no commitment. So actually, if your commitments or your life priorities change after a few months or after a year or two, then we can kind of rotate people around. Click. Last click for this slide, Amber. Perfect. Now, we're looking for 15 people. We would hope that 2 of those people would be willing to co-chair this group so you can shape its direction yourselves moving forward. And we're not there to sort of oversee this. That's really important. We will be there to support it. And some of the colleagues might want to say a bit more about this in a second. But we do anticipate that we will have more applications than 15 applications. So in selecting people, just please do be aware that we are looking to get those kind of mixes that I mentioned before. There's no kind of scoring criterion, but we're looking to get a really broad mix. So, we may get 10 excellent advocates or people with lived experience in neuromuscular diseases. We wouldn't necessarily be kind of bringing all 10 of those on. So if we don't appoint you to the LEAP this time, what we do ask on the application form is whether we can hold on to your contact details, because there are going to be lots of other ways that we would like to potentially engage you. So we're kind of using this recruitment exercise as a way to sort of build our community, whether it's bringing people in for things like citizen workshops, whether it's bringing people in to share your thoughts on future webinars or to join brainstorming sessions, or even whether it's something more passive, like we'd like to invite you to sign up for newsletters. There are other things in the background that we'd like to be able to do with people. Next slide, Amber. So the deadline at the moment is the 11th of April. I say that's, initially, because what we'll do is on the 11th of April, we'll look at what we've got. If we do have, 13 neuromuscular applications and nothing from anybody anywhere else in any other conditions, or if we have everybody applying just from Northern Ireland and nobody anywhere else, then we'll do a little bit of we'll have to do a little bit of a plan B, and we'll probably go out and do some more targeted recruitment. So it's a little bit of it's not a perfect science. It's a little bit of a movable feast, but we do want to try to bring in as many people as possible to start building an interest in this new centre, but also really get that breadth. So the application is the form's online. Some people have already started filling this in, which is great. If you have any challenges with doing that, and doing the online is not easy for you, and you'd rather to complete that over the phone with somebody, then our brilliant colleagues in Belfast have provided a dedicated telephone number, which is also on our webpage. So you can call that and they'll set up a time with you. It might not be instantly that moment, but they'll set up a time for you when they can go through the application form with you, and you can tell them what to put in for you. So that you'll also find this leaflet, by the way, on the right-hand side here, which just contains in a more synthesized way the kind of information that I'm giving you here. So next slide. These last ones before I hand over and see, Dave, if you have any responses to any of the questions, but also to invite Christine, Kerry, Sophie, or Stephen if they want to add anything about where they see the value in all of this. This is just the form, so it asks for your basic details. We want to know where you're based in the UK, like I said, so we can get that kind of geographic coverage. Next slide. Then we ask a bit about your lived experience. And again, this is just to make sure that we try to get as broad a range as possible, but also thinking about those other activities that I mentioned, other ways to bring you in, for instance, some of the work around defining better patient-reported outcome measures, about, looking at access to medicines once a medicine has been licensed. So we ask about the type of condition that you have, what your situation is, and also whether you are a patient yourself, whether you're a carer, etc. Next slide. We ask you to tell us why you'd like to join the LEAP. This doesn't have to be an essay. It doesn't have to be, in fact, there's a limit to characters. It doesn't have to be deeply eloquent. It's really just, what's attracted you to the opportunity and what do you think you can bring? We ask if you've participated in any kind of PPIE activity before, so any patient and public involvement group before. If yes, we ask you to just summarize that. If no, that's absolutely fine as well. We'll actively be looking for some people who have had no previous experience, so don't let that put you off. And then the last questions just ask you about your gender, age, and ethnicity. Again, because we have a dedicated EDI work package, and we're really conscious that we want to be embedding best practice around really getting a truly diverse range of people into this. So Amber, I think that's the last slide. So if we can maybe leave that up for a second, just in case people need to see the sort of social media and the website links again. But Dave, just before I ask the other colleagues to highlight anything that I've missed or to explain, why they see this as a valuable opportunity, is there anything that you wanted to kind of synthesize or respond to from the Q&A?
Yeah, so I don't want to hog it too much. I think it's a really interesting one. I know Christine wants to talk about the children and young people, which I think is a very important point, because one of the things about rare disease is, of course, it spans the life, the age, the ages, and that's really important. What I would say in relation to what people have been commenting on is that this the leap is both to help guide us in terms of what we're doing, but it's also to have a voice. And I can guarantee that voice will be listened to. So the Life Arc Centres are one of a number of initiatives that are going on at the moment, including some things that are much closer, perhaps the National Health Service, Department of Health, who are involved in some of these things. And I think some of the comments about postcode lottery and so on, I think are really important. And I think we would like the Leap to have that, to express those views so that we can take those forward. There can be some complacency in the Department of Health about how effective their initiatives are at reaching people, which isn't necessarily the same experience of people out there in the real world. And so what I would commit to is that this voice is an authentic one, and we are very well connected in terms of getting our voice heard, and we want your voice to be heard as well. So that's a reason to get involved in this. I sense the frustration, I hear that, but this is an opportunity to shape all of that. I think that's very important. There's a comment about repurposing. That's really interesting, because in simple terms, if you're thinking about drugs, there are two sorts of routes to a new drug. One is to develop a new drug. That's usually done by companies. That has a sort of fairly predictable structure to it. But the other is to reuse an existing drug, and that's called repurposing. Now, that is a route to much quicker uptake of treatments. You don't have to do the development of the drug, it's already been developed. But the important thing about this is that there is now an NHS initiative around repurposing. And so there is a route now whereby people can apply to get drugs repurposed and approved for that. Now, it's early days with it, and it's got some teething things, but that is certainly something that I think we want to come back to with the group and help with that. So the people doing it, I've been involved in giving some advice about a particular drug. They are well-meaning, they haven't quite got the process right, but it is there for groups to come along and present a case for why this matters. And I think, Vicky, I think we should take slightly, as part of all of this, take that away and wonder whether we should get the NHS repurposing people to come along and talk to everybody about how we do that. So there is now a route by which you can get NHS approval for a repurposing, and that can be triggered by any group, a company, academics, but importantly, patients and the community. So I think that might be really interesting to people to do.
Yeah.
I find the comments about the experience about organizations participating in a trial but not recruiting into it slightly odd, because why would I mean, it's correct because people have experienced it and several people have commented on it, which does seem very strange. I think we would be quite happy to find out a little bit more in particular instances, because the NIHR, National Institute of Health Research, part of Department of Health, supports the delivery of clinical trials, and the NHS Constitution says that research should be available to everybody who wishes to take part in it. And so to kind of open things and then not support them goes against those things, and it just probably is worth finding out a little bit more. NIHR are very keen to support rare disease. It does, however, make the point as to why we're developing our recruitment platform, because this is the vehicle to actually bypass somebody who, an administrator who isn't particularly interested in recruiting into the study, because it's you that makes the approach directly into the trial team. And so this is in fact a reason why we're doing what we do. And the final comment about getting things through into practice and cost, that's all about having the right evidence of the ways in which drugs work and are cost effective. And I think what it isn't price, it is value that really matters. And that's why one of the work packages which does health economics, which is about really understanding the costs to you and to your family members and to your loved ones of all of this. And I think this is the key thing here is to get that information collected properly. So this is for us to communicate to people doing trials, is you must build this in, because there is no point in having the best drug in the world if NICE then reject it because you haven't showed that it's value for it. That's a failing of the researchers, and we must stop people from doing it. In the answered questions, there's a comment about quality of life. That summarizes the last 10 years of my work, which is this appreciation that actually in my world, people were looking at what mattered to the scientists, not what mattered to the patients. And we now have an NHS supported clinic, which is the only one in the world which deals with chronic symptoms like fatigue in my area of autoimmune liver disease, precisely because that's what really matters. And the important thing is that clinic is now supporting trials that are specifically aimed at improving symptoms, and we're working with the regulators to get approval of drugs on the basis of symptomatic approval. So this thing is going the whole circle, and that comes from the clear patient voice about what really matters. So I could not agree with that point more. And work package 2, which is about helping investigators for whom this is not a natural area for them to work, to put these things into their studies, is really, really important. And one of the things we are looking to do in the future is to have a service whereby every clinical trial in rare disease can have this aspect built into it by supporting people to do that. And that's one of the things that hopefully Life Art will be interested in supporting. So I think they're great comments, a lot of food for thought. But my point at the beginning of this little bit is really important. This is your voice. I guarantee, as Vicky guarantees, you could not have two people more committed to having your voice heard than the two of us. We will commit to take the voice of the leap forward and make sure it's heard by the people who need to hear it. And that's an open promise to make this worthwhile for everybody. But I will shut up and let other people have time to talk.
Well, actually, I was going to ask Christine if you would maybe want to address the comment about or the question around how we engage children and young people, and then maybe we can come to Stephen to answer Jill's question about whether actually this is entirely on the application form, or is there going to be a bit of an interview process, and you can maybe talk about what's planned there in terms of engaging with people after the submissions. But Christine, over to you.
Hello, thanks very much, Vicky, and thanks very much to everybody for coming and being interested in this project. I think I'll echo what Dave has said about the sort of absolute commitment to take your voice and make sure it is fed in. And in particular, the point about making sure children and young people are heard. We are actually going to have a separate children and young persons panel. Current plans, I think that is not meant to be set up for a little while, but actually it's one of the first things on my list of things I would like to learn from in the adult leap, if we can call it this, is right, you've got families, do we need to bring that program in sooner? Because it does seem to me that at the moment we probably haven't got the timing quite right. So very much interested in the voices of children and young people, aware of the need to have special methods for making sure that children and young people can have their voices heard, because you can't expect teenagers to sit down in a Zoom meeting for 6 hours. It won't work. But there are other methodologies, so we're very keen to do all of that, if that helps.
No, that's perfect, Christina. The timing is a good point to make, because ideally we would have this group, set up even before the project starts, so that people can really start working and shaping the delivery of the activities. So we're gonna, hopefully this group can hit the ground running, and we can make sure that we build all of your voices in at the critical moments as the project's starting to get going. Stephen, over to you. Do you want to introduce yourself and maybe talk a little bit about how we're going to manage our applications and what kind of interview process might be envisaged? And
Yeah,
if anyone has
sure.
any other questions in the meantime, do put them in the chat and we'll make sure we get to them.
Thank you. Thanks, Vicky. Hi, everybody. I'm Stephen Blackburn, so I'm from the University of Birmingham. So I've been working in areas of sort of patient involvement, patient engagement in research for over 12 years now across a range of different research and health conditions. I'm actually quite new to the rare disease world, so this is a learning curve for me as well. But I just want to say thank you for taking the time to join us today and find out a little bit more about this. So in answer to, I lost some power, so I actually came out of the call, so I don't know who said that, who gave the question, but in terms of the application process to leave, there is an application form, which obviously Vicky's gone through, but we're not necessarily having a formal interview as such. It will be a process of looking through the applications, and we have some areas that we want to ensure that we have a mix of people on there. So a mix of different health conditions, mix of people for where they may live in the country, ages, and gender. So to ensure that we get a range of different perspectives and voices as part of the LEAP group. And from the people that we identify as, kind of fitting within that diversity, is that we'll then reach out to people one at a time, and we won't have an interview, but we'll have a conversation with people just to find out a little bit more people, get to know people as well, answer any questions that they have about it, and see if they're really interested in actually becoming a member of the group. And if they are, great, we'll have you on board. And if not, that's absolutely fine. If you feel that it's not right for you, and then we'll kind of go on to the next people in the list as well. So not a formal interview process, but more of a conversation and a get to know you.
Thanks, Stephen. That's really helpful. So hopefully that that answers that question. Joanne, I've saw your question. I'm not sure if Amber, if you already have people's contact emails or if it's completely anonymous, but if you don't have Joanne's email, if you're happy for us to email you about that, Joanne, then we can do that and we can get Dave and our 3 centre leads. So in terms of the structure, we have Dave's our coordinator, but each of our 3 kind of core universities involved in this has a centre lead. So it's AJ McKnight from Belfast, it's Tim Barrett from Birmingham, and it's Volker Stroud from Newcastle. So we can get their brains working and see if we can understand the situation and give you some guidance there as well. We're very happy to do our best. I don't think we've got any other specific questions, but I'm conscious, does any of our other PPIE experts, so Kerry or Sophie, would either of you or Sarah, anybody want to comment on where you see the real added value of this opportunity, or anything that we should have mentioned to people that we haven't so far?
Oh, hi, Victoria. It's Kerry Longmore here. I'm the Community Outreach Impact Officer for Queen's University Belfast. Here in Northern Ireland, we quite often feel isolated from a great deal of the opportunities and projects, and I'm sure this is the case for many areas around the UK. So just all the more reason to come on board and participate and represent your area and to represent rare disease.
Super. Thanks, Kerry. And that's a really good point. And I do want to reiterate that we have no idea if we're going to get 15 applications for this, or if we're going to get 100 applications. We really don't know. We'll have to see over the next couple of weeks. But don't let that put you off, because if you are really interested in the centre and engaging with us, then as I said, there are lots of other ways we can do that. So one thing that I think we'll definitely need to do, and I know the colleagues in Belfast are already kind of on the ball with this, is looking at our the 3 devolved nations, and not just thinking about an England centric approach, but really better understanding what is the status quo there, because where I'm in Newcastle or Northumberland, even further north, I don't know very much about the status quo in Scotland in terms of how that really differs in terms of patients' ability to be part of different clinical trials. Is it sort of circumstantial things that make it difficult to participate based on where you live and the difficulties in travel, etc., or are there sort of legislative, more fundamental things that we need to be trying to address around equity of access to clinical research and to medicines? So I think having things like focus groups, online focus groups, maybe some in-person events. There'll be lots of ways, depending on the kind of responses that you give us, that I think we would like to come back to you. Again, if you're happy for us to recontact you. So if you are, then please do make sure you tick that box on the form. Sophie, was there anything that you wanted to add? maybe introduce yourself. Kerry Leeson Beavis couldn't be with us today. She's on holiday, and she did try regardless, but she's stuck in traffic. So she sends her apologies, but your voices are really important in this as well. So do you want to just tell us how you're engaged here?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm Sophie. I'm the Lived Experience Coordinator at Alstrom Syndrome UK. I've been at the organisation about 3-4 months now, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's to hear your lived experience. I also have my own health conditions and experience in a rare condition as well. Yeah, I completely understand the patient experience. I feel hugely excited about this project. Everybody involved is very passionate about improving rare disease research, and really hearing your voice involved in that and shaping it. And I think Dave pretty much covered everything that I would have said. It's essential to have rare disease patients involved in every step of the way, and to have as many voices heard as possible. So I think in one of the questions and answers, I put my email address if anybody wants to drop me a line and has any more questions or concerns or anything like that. We do run and facilitate a range of patient groups. So yeah, please do drop me a line. You're most welcome to.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sophie. Anything else that any of our panel members would like to say, or any of our participants would like to add before we close? If not, then I'd like to echo everybody else in thanking you all for joining us. We will upload the recording for this for the webinar onto the website, so that when people come to us with questions or wanting to know more about the opportunity, we can point them there. But I think then I'd just like to thank Dave for joining us in his busy schedule, and the absolute same for Christine, Stephen, Kerry, Sophie, Hayley, Matthew, and Amber. And Amber, thank you for setting this up for us. Like I say, after years of Zoom, I've never actually it's the first time I've been on a webinar that kind of we have organized. So hopefully it's been given people the chance to sort of, you know, get your messages out there. Hopefully all the text worked okay, and yeah, we look forward to hopefully receiving some applications and working with you all in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.